All right, folks. So today I'm joined by Dan LeBlanc. Dan's from New Brunswick, Canada. He's got, Dan, over 25 years of experience managing production and continuous improvement programs in French fry and other potato processing plants. Recently, Dan, you've taken on a new role at Potatoes New Brunswick as the Director of Industry Insights. Um, Welcome to the Tater Talk podcast.
Thanks, Mike. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Dan and I have met each other a few times over our careers and never really got to dig too deep into each other's work streams. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. 25 years of experience is a lot in any industry, so I'm sure you've got lots of nuggets to share. Lessons learned, probably hard lessons learned from years past. So I'm
Absolutely.
looking forward to it. So Dan, 25 years in French fry processing primarily, I'm guessing, right?
Yep. Yep. Some appetizers and some, especially potato products as well, but mostly in traditional fries and formed potato specialty products. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Over 25 years, you must have seen a lot of interesting and maybe at times frustrating changes in the industry. But I'm interested to learn about that. But first, let's go back even further. I mean, 25 years ago does seem like a long time ago, but how did you get into the potato processing industry 25 years ago in the first place?
So I was born and raised in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia.
Hmm.
You don't grow many potatoes in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. You fish a lot of lobster. That's about it. But no, born and raised there. Went through university at Dalhousie and Acadia University, and when I graduated university, I sent out my resumes to a lot of maritime. I knew that I didn't want to really leave the Maritimes, but
Hmm.
all of your major employers situated in the Maritimes, and was contacted back from a few and went through a series of interviews, met, and joined on with the major French fry producing company in New Brunswick. So started my career with them, and on my first day, talking about how times have changed. Standard
Hmm.
issue back then for a production management trainee, I was issued a little notebook, a pen,
Hmm.
dry erase marker, stopwatch, and a calculator. So that was my standard issue. That was a standard issue for a production management trainee back in 2000. No laptop, no email address. That didn't come
Hmm.
along until probably 2003, 2004.
That probably
Yeah.
kept you quite focused on the work at hand, right?
Well, it absolutely
And
did. And I can't
yeah.
say enough good things about the production management training program that I joined in on. It really affords, the opportunity for, young university graduates to start in a potato facility and to learn, the operations literally, it's cliche, but to learn from the ground up, right? So you're working nights, weekends, 12-hour shifts. You get to know your people, you get to know the processes, you get to know the pain points. Crisis at 3 o'clock in the morning
Hmm.
is different to deal with when you're all alone than Monday to Friday 8 to 5 when you get hordes of support people around you. So yeah.
So that production management trainee program, that was something that you felt was like extremely beneficial for somebody new coming in, no potato experience at all by the sounds of it. Not you weren't a farmer or
No,
anything like that, right?
I can't advocate enough for the value that it provides.
Hmm.
And back then, under the leadership that the company had, everybody, all young talent, started in the production management trainee program for at least, Mike, 2 years, I want to say. Right. And then from there, those young professionals, if there was openings in marketing, if there was openings in sales, if there was openings in HR, it was the proving ground for all young talent, starting with the company. So, and it served a lot of people well because they never
Hmm.
forgot the time they spent in the production management trainee program. Right. So they
Hmm.
went through and, oh yeah, I remember that, looking over there, the night that the water softener system plugged up and overflowed, like they remember that stuff. Right. Never
It's
forget.
truly foundational.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. Boots on the ground
yeah.
or right on the factory floor experience.
Learning how to talk and interact with people, right?
Hmm.
Building rapport, establishing credibility. Like it's a pretty it's a pretty important things that you develop in that production management training program.
And how long do you recall being in that PMT program?
I'm gonna say that that I would say that I was in the PMT program till 2005.
Hmm.
2005. Yeah,
So
and
that's
then
about
from
five
there,
years,
yeah,
was it?
all
Yeah.
all of it all of it in the same town in Grand Falls, and the facility
Hmm.
had a pizza factory, a juice factory, a fry factory. So you got to move around and see different
Hmm.
environments inside under the PMT umbrella, over in shipping and receiving. So you got to learn a lot about the business at the ground level before ever starting your way up the ladder. So
Absolutely. That foundation's extremely important. As I talk to other folks in industry or just in industry in general, manufacturing and especially food production, it's like people entering the workforce, younger folks entering the workforce tend to want to move really quickly. They want to take on a lot of responsibility, authority, climb the ladder, whatever. I I hear that from people and I see it myself a little bit. Do you think that, if you're coaching young people today that are considering looking for jobs, what would you tell them about a program like the PMT program or just any general advice, when you're faced with entering the food processing industry?
I hear you and I see it and I agree with you that today in
Hmm.
2025, it seems like that there's expectations that the growth curve is going to be a lot steeper and a lot faster than what it should be. And
Hmm.
what happens is, I've seen it myself. I think you see people that are promoted too quickly, too fast, at too high level without understanding what really happens on the ground floor of any environment. I'm based on potato manufacturing, but it could be any industry at all, right? And when there are these programs set up to set you up for success, the message would just be allow yourself to be a sponge and to soak it all in, because any of these experiences, um, they'll never they'll never serve you wrong, right?
Go slow to go far and absorb it. Yeah.
Mike, I can tell you, and I'm not kidding, that in 25 years, I never once went back to anything I learned in university. Not a thing. Not a thing. Not once. But I can tell you that over the last 25 years, every experience that I had, everything that blew up, everything that started leaking, everything that broke down, I remember that. And I remember what had to be done to mitigate it and to prevent it from happening in the future. And like, I remember that stuff, but I don't remember using anything that I learned in university.
Oh
I
yeah, I
honestly,
bet.
I honestly think, and I'd go so far as to say that university was a prerequisite for the PMT program. I
Okay.
would I would equally say that trade school would be a good prerequisite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now
And
that
there
being
is
said,
some, go ahead.
that being said, I'm a business administration degree, business graduate, and a couple of my colleagues, we used to joke that we were the last of a dying breed because the transition was going over to young engineers. So I'm going to say that the PMT program, after I started, kind of gradually switching over to engineers, which was a better fit. However, what happened when that what the effects of that was that I mentioned earlier about people moving on into sales and marketing and HR and other disciplines. Well, the engineers weren't going to do that. So a lot of people that ended up in the other functions of the business never really participated in the PMT program. So they lacked that perspective on what really happens inside the four walls of a factory.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You now have some industry, some additional industry um, insights, I guess, that you're developing as part of your new role. But in an unofficial capacity, like, where, what do you think the industry looks like for young people that are entering the workforce now, whether it's from college or from university or from high school. The food, either the food processing industry or the agriculture industry. What, sometimes they get a bad rap unless they're family members that come up in that industry. But,
Yeah.
you know, what do you think that if you could share a message with young people coming into it, what would it be?
Well, my initial when you asked that question, the initial thing that my initial emotion that I felt was worry.
Yeah.
I'm well, no, I mean this is these it's the last I don't know if it's been 10 years, but it's been way more than 5 years. This trend in globalization
Mm-hmm.
worries me for it worries me for our youth of today, especially youth that aren't in India, China, and other developing countries. I
Sure.
think there's tremendous growth for
Mm-hmm.
youth in those countries. I'm a little bit worried about where all of our youth in Canada and the United States, North American youth, um, I'm worried, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, everybody, the low cost producers are always going to win, and those factories are always going to be full. And consumer trends these days, are there's a lot of people that are, following different nutritional trends and different nutritional um, ideologies.
Mm-hmm.
And fried potato products don't necessarily fit in with a lot of those, right?
Right.
Um, but so not sure. I mean, I kind of skirted around the questions you asked me, but do I have any advice for the youth today? Um, don't don't be in a rush. Don't be in a
Mm.
hurry. Don't be in a hurry. And employers today, I mean, so that being said, the globalization trend that I mentioned, for the youth today, if there's any youth that are aspiring, um, to travel and see the world,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of our major producers that have facilities and operations around the globe, right? So
Yeah.
they're looking for talent, and any talent that's mobile, that's a tremendous opportunity for youth of today as well. So
Now, over 25 years, I'm sure, your time on the factory floor, you're working through processing innovation. So you've seen technology change. You've seen probably the challenges on the factory floor change in terms of, you know, extra skills required for maintaining new equipment. Um, just the pressure of 24/7 operation, high capacity output. It seems like there is a demand for, bright young minds to really develop or take, their technological education or skill set and apply that to a food processing application like potato production, right? Whether it's farming or
mhm.
processing, because the technology has advanced so much, not in just 25 years, but even in the last 5 years with optical technology and, machine learning and like data science and everything else, right? So, I think that your message is a good one. Be patient and think globally. But also, I would add that there's a lot of interesting problems still to solve in the industry, right? So those that
Mhm.
like a challenge
Yeah,
can find a lot of meaningful work in the industry too.
yeah, and for
Yeah.
the companies as well. You mentioned this. You're right. The technology, gets better and better. Every decade, I'm going to say.
Hmm.
Um, but another worry too is it's not just bells and whistles to look and sound good either, right? It's a
Hmm.
business decision. These are business decisions to upgrade these factories, to cutting edge, and anything cutting edge has a cost,
Yeah.
right? So, like I said a couple minutes ago, the volume is always going to go to the low cost producer, and even within one company, the factories that are low cost are going to get all the volume.
Yeah.
So,
So there's the there's the technology aspect that, but then there's just executing production, right? Like,
yeah,
we talked before we hit record, we were talking about the importance of um, training, engagement,
Yeah.
planning really well for when, new equipment is installed or projects are done or new initiatives are completed. So, things start up really well.
The whole sum process, startup management process,
Startup management, yes,
startup
or
management,
operational
it's
readiness. Yep.
critical. And when I think about the startup management process, um, it encompasses everything that we were talking about, right? It's about um, identifying equipment defects before it's go time, right? Through
Mhm.
proper commissioning process. It's about making sure that the operators understand that when they're coming back in after the 14-day shutdown, they have new assets in their area, right? We need to make sure that those operators understand how those assets work. We have a lot of our factory, well, all of our factories now have mature maintenance management systems, right? So did we properly fold those new assets into the maintenance management system so that we don't miss that bearing over in the corner that we never got lubricated because it wasn't folded in properly through the startup management process. The startup management process can never be big enough. It can never be all. You could always do something better in startup management, but startup management needs to be an absolute holistic practice to make sure that when it's go time on day 15 and you have to start that line, then that line is already fully integrated in all of the management systems of a factory.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think it would be really interesting to hear a story from you where the startup management process wasn't implemented well or wasn't given the attention it needed, and it resulted in particular challenges, right? Like I know I don't know a specific one, but I know from somebody that's got 25 years in the stick of it that you've got some stories, right? Just to paint a picture of how important it really is.
Yeah, I mean, how do you pick one? I mean,
Yeah,
whether
there's
it's a
got to
new
be one. There's got
whether
to
it's
be phone calls
a new
after phone
packaging
calls after phone calls. Yeah.
and new auto palletizer, new packaging hull, new starch removal system, new you name it, Mike. I mean,
Hmm.
I've seen numerous shutdowns where we come back in and we stumble for a month afterwards
A
because
month.
the sum process wasn't executed properly, and then and the other part too, the other part that has to work in tandem with the sum process is the deficiency lists on capital projects. Just because the taps run out of water, it doesn't mean the deficiency list is gone. So somehow, through the whole costing and getting estimates for the capital projects, like we need to finish those deficiency lists because honestly, the plants have a fixed maintenance budget on their overheads to maintain. And when capital projects aren't installed or executed properly, and the deficiency list goes away because the capital spent all of the money allotted to the capital, it still doesn't mean that those deficiencies have gone away. And a lot of times, Mike, I've seen a lot of times that these deficiency lists never get resolved, which results in the assets never reaching uh, their peak
Mm-hmm.
ability. So.
And really, any of these capital investments, they're predicated or they're calculated, the ROI is calculated, assuming that once the equipment goes in and it starts operating, at that agreed date, whether it's, a certain date or a week after an agreed startup date, there's a ramp up curve. That's, the return is assumed to be there after that. It's not factoring in all the callbacks for deficiencies, the wasted materials or ingredients because it wasn't working correctly, and um, all the lost, the training, all the mistakes made by inadequate training or whatever.
Yep.
Um, they rely on stuff starting up. So, I agree with you significantly, like how important this
So
startup
how
management program is.
so how
Yeah.
cool would it be at the beginning of the sum process? I use sum for startup management. At the beginning of the
Hmm.
sum process, you develop your sum scorecard to reflect what the ROI expectations were in the capital, and not just
Yeah.
the return on investment. What are the expectations on safety, quality, cost, delivery, and morale? All of those areas, and you can measure the success of a sum process by did we meet those objectives when we start up? And if we didn't, how long did it take to ramp up to meet them?
Yeah. And then what can we learn better for next time, right? How
Yeah.
can we sharpen that saw? Take the lessons learned, roll those into the next one, and really invest the time, the energy, the people, the expertise to make sure that at the end of the day, we deliver what we committed to, right?
Yeah.
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 Extremely important. So, your role in continuous improvement at your previous processor employer there, how much of that was built or was really a part of this educating engineering teams and factory teams on the startup management process?
Very little.
Yeah. Okay.
The opinions that I formed over the Sun process weren't, and probably wrongfully so, Mike, because some probably should be folded into the CI, the continuous improvement programs in our in the factories, but they're not. So largely, the CI programs are largely, production oriented, not necessarily engineering slash capital
Mm,
oriented. Some of the touch points that I've seen with something around some is basically engineering for safety, engineering for quality, engineering for profit, for productivity,
mm-hmm.
as a pre-process, right? So basically scrubbing
Mm-hmm.
the blueprints to make sure that, with a cross-functional team, to make sure that the design's right.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's generally I think CI programs face, they're focused on reducing waste, reducing defects, improving productivity. So
Mm-hmm.
through
I
operations.
mean, and the CI programs brought you across many regions with your employer as well, right? Like you
Yeah,
covered a lot of ground, right?
Europe and a couple of countries in Europe, and was able to do all over the North American, both U.S. and Canada. Was able to do some work in Argentina, through CI. So, no, very grateful for the experiences and the things that I saw at different cultures, and it was pretty rewarding.
And the concepts that you were working on, lean, 5S, other continuous improvement concepts to reduce waste, improve efficiency, productivity, and so on. I mean, those concepts apply globally, right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
assume that you were able to bring those concepts, adjust for cultural, um, maybe cultural fit here and there, but the concepts were the same, right?
so the two interesting things on that. One is, um, it's not always easy in a unionized environment to
Mm-hmm.
affect and to
Okay.
manage change. Okay, you got to identify the stakeholders and make sure there's always the CBA, that we need to make sure that we're not crowding in on the CBA, but it's doable. The other thing is the cultural aspect that you mentioned. There's a lot of cultures around the world that adopt change differently than others, and some cultures, it's the absolute norm to resist change until they're convinced that it's the right change to make. And it doesn't mean that happens any worse in those countries or any better. It's just different. And you have to identify. You have to know those things before you go in, to make sure that your plan of attack is appropriate. So,
Go back to pre-planning, right?
yeah,
Thinking, yeah, thinking up front and how you're going to be successful at the end of the day.
yeah,
Because you can have the best CI program technically, but without that change management process in place that takes into account the people involved,
yeah,
it has a high potential of flopping, right?
yeah.
Or
And you need to
maybe, yeah, go ahead.
you need to identify too, like, I'm sitting here week 5 or week 6 into a new role,
Hmm.
that it's the same industry, but there's two other sectors, being the seed sector and the table sector, which are completely foreign to me, right? So, I mean, I've
Hmm.
spent the last 25 years in the processing sector, and understanding what happens to potatoes from the storage through the consumer, I know that pretty well. But the
Hmm.
whole seed cycle, the whole crop cycle, the storage cycle until they're ready to deliver to the processor, it's all foreign to me. So, here in the near term, I need to identify who are the stakeholders, what and how do I play with those stakeholders to make sure that I can translate that into value and insights for the grower community, which are my employers.
Hmm.
Yeah, that
Okay.
pre-planning, right? So I need to pre-plan
Yeah.
in this
Hmm.
role. in order to be
Yeah.
successful. And I'm in week 5 and I'm already thinking about, what do I need to do in the next 30, 60, 90 days in order to deliver value for the people that expect it of me.
Yeah, that's a great principle. I'm curious, like from a technical principle or program perspective, um, that applied through your career, like Lean and 5S and some of the production management activities. How do you see those potentially being adopted differently in the ag side, on the grower side?
I see it, Mike. I see it, but I, I see it, but I can't
You see
speak
it.
about it right now. Like
Yeah.
I need to establish, I need to build rapport and create credibility. And when I'm out on a farm right now, when I see those things, if I see, an oil patch on the floor, if I see, something
It
hanging from
screams
the
at
frame,
you. It
I know,
screams at you. Yeah.
but that's not why I'm there right now. But
No.
I think over time, I think that's value that I can bring to the role.
Yeah.
Um, we do have the, Canada Gap and other various food safety, food security programs that our growing community operates under, which are foreign to me. But I think the policies, once I peel back the layers on those there, I think that probably the principles are the same. So I'll be able to help the grower community
Yeah,
on
that's
that.
got to be an exciting position to be in. You've got this wealth of experience, these technical things that you see a path to apply them to your grower community, right?
Yeah,
And yeah.
it's
Well, that's great.
energizing. Like they're like,
Yeah.
you would ask me this 5 years ago if I was, I was a lifer. Like there was no question that I was going to retire where I was at. But times change, and priorities change, and values change over time, and it was just the right move to be made. And but no, it's going to be exciting. I'm energized. I feel like I'm 30 years old again. All
I
ready to
wish I did.
all ready to go. I just don't know where I'm going and how to get there, but I'm energized and I'm ready to go. So
Yeah, that's great to hear.
yeah.
I'm also really curious as you get more into your new role, where you start to see where processors could learn from the discipline or the response to uncertainty or unpredictability that growers live with, right? Because there's got to be some mindsets and some
it's
things that they do that really should be adopted at the production level, at the
it's so
processing level.
it goes both ways. One of the trends that I'm seeing right now, Mike, just in my short time here, is how many of our farms are intergenerational right now at this point in time.
Yeah.
Like 25 years ago, you just saw there was one face of the farm, or two faces, and they were from the same generation. Now it's so refreshing to see that there's a lot of the kids, the offspring that are kind of growing up into the farm, and they're in the process of taking the reins. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of that's going to come with the next generation. I think they inherently ask different questions, and they
Mhm.
inherently look at things differently. And just like the same way that back in 2000, that those people I was seeing, they saw that from their mothers and fathers as well, right? So
Mhm.
but right now we're in a phase where there's a lot of farms right now where you're seeing the parents and the children together in the process of doing a handoff. And I think it's the next generation that are asking those questions that you just asked of me, Mike. Right? How do
Mhm.
you look at that differently? The operations, um, and then the second part of your question is, how do the processors look and see what's happening on the farms? There's a lot of trends right now um, in, in farming, um, but um, I think the processors understand globalization and what it means and what the impacts are. I don't think largely the growing community understands what are the puts and takes there as much as
Mhm.
the processors do. And we're coming up into contract negotiation time for our processing contracts. And when you're hearing and you're reading the headlines about product from India and China moving into developed markets, and taking volume away from um, the in-house, the in-country processors, which in
Right.
turn the secondary and tertiary economies that creates at the local level. And I mean, and let's be clear, you don't grow potatoes in downtown Toronto, right? So
Oh,
all of these
no.
economies are rural. They're all rural economies, and largely the towns. And I'm not going to say cities. I'm going to say the towns where these processors operate. Um, it's the processor and the growers that are the reason the town exists, right? So they got to come together on that and understand. I think we need to share more back and forth, mutual sharing between the growers and the processors, so that they each have a full appreciation for each other's position, especially when it comes to contract negotiation time. Because I mean, there's nothing that the growers are facing that's going down in price. Nothing.
Yeah,
And, and
that's an ongoing trend
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
and margins aren't as high as they are on a
Hmm.
farm as they are, in some of our processing operations. So and I'm not going to say that they should go open book with one another. That's not what I'm advocating for, but um, one's not going to win without the other. The processors aren't going to win with the growers. The growers aren't going to win without the processors. So it's about that mutual understanding and mutual agreement. Right?
Yes, they have to be partnered together,
Yeah,
and have that understanding in order to remain competitive on a broader, either a larger regional or a global scale, because that's just the reality that
yeah,
you see, and it's what I hear from others as well. So
yeah,
it's definitely it's definitely challenging times ahead, I believe. Um, but this new generation that's coming in, to the growership side, and hopefully, there are young people coming into the processing side, and people that have been in processing and farming operations for many years now that are coming into more leadership roles. It's not all doom and gloom, right? So
right,
it's a growing industry.
right.
The industry continues to grow,
And
and it.
there's another aspect of our society that's not necessarily keeping up either. Is 25 years ago, a grade 12 education was required to work in the processing facilities, and largely I think that with a little bit of understanding on basic mechanics was enough, right?
Right.
We talked about these investments. We talked about the ROI over the years, cutting edge technology. Well, there's a different skill set required to operate the equipment in 2025 than there was in 2020. And
Yeah.
I don't know that our um, high school graduates are graduating with the same level of technical aptitude required as what they would have in the 90s and 2000. So then, we're looking on a trade school. Like I know there's different parts of Europe where in order to be an operator in the factories, you need a 2-year community college program, not just a
Hmm.
grade 12, right?
Hmm.
So uh, Molson and Moncton, right? You look at the Molson Brewery in Moncton where there's no maintenance department, there's no sanitation department, there's no quality control department. There's highly skilled operators that are sometimes, red sealed tradesmen that are operating, maintaining, cleaning, and doing their own quality checks, right? So they might be making
Yeah.
45, $50 an hour. They're highly skilled, highly trained, highly capable. But rather than have 4 different departments to run a factory, you've just got one set of people that run their factory, right? So, that's a different concept as well that's largely untapped in a lot of our potato processing facilities, right?
I would say in potato processing, that is not a typical model at all.
Mm. Yeah,
Very lightly
yeah,
adopted.
yeah,
Yep. Well, you've got a lot ahead of you to think about in this new role, only 5, 6 weeks into it, and I'm glad to hear it's exciting times. And it'll be interesting to hear from you in a year's time how things are unfolding. Um, we're about time to wrap up here, Dan. One thing that I always got to ask is, what's your favorite way to eat potatoes? What's your favorite potato dish?
So when I was working at one of our, we were working at one of our factories there, and we had a process called fresh chill, which was a, a blanch freeze process, right? And sometimes you would end up with these little over blanched pieces, and they were called fresh chill diced. It's about a 1 inch by 1 inch diced potato, or maybe 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch diced potato. And when you got the over blanched ones and you reconstitute them in the fryer, and they would fry right out. Those were the absolute, and they were heavily brined, salty. But
Hmm.
those were the best product that I had in the factory. So
Oh, those
yeah,
sound delicious.
they were
What
very
would you
good.
call those? They need a catchy name.
I don't know. We called them fresh chill diced. And when you had the
Fresh
over
chilled dice.
when you had the
Yeah.
over blanched ones and they come out of the fryer and they were
Hmm.
all crispy and crunchy, and those were with the brined, they were actually brined in the flume before on their way down to the freezer. Those were the best, in my opinion. Those are the
So
best.
they were out of spec, but they were great.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
would have been great as a defect on the grade sheet, but they were the most delicious ones.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, it was awesome spending time with you today and learning a bit about your background and some of your ideas about the industry. I know that there's people out there that are going to get a lot out of this conversation, so I
Hope
really
so.
appreciate it. Yep. And definitely good luck in your new role.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.